This is stunning. While I was at the front lines in Ukraine with Ukrainian soldiers, I had a chance to play for them. And I felt weird doing this because of how aggravating what was being said in the clips. But I got to play for them clips of Witkoff, Trump's Russian envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Trump himself saying outrageous things about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And had a Ukrainian soldier respond. As we're recording this, literally attacks are happening on the town and the surrounding towns that we're in. That's the context. As face to face with the subject that you can possibly get. People are every day risking their life fighting Russia. And they got to respond sitting with us to these clips. It was really stunning. Let me play this for you. We'll start with the Witkoff one, and then we'll get to Trump.
Of all,
I think the largest issue in that conflict are these so-called four regions: Donbass,
Yes.
Crimea, the names
Lugansk, yeah.
Lugansk, and there's two others. They're Russian-speaking.
Yep.
There have been referendums where the overwhelming majority of the people have indicated that they want to be under Russian rule.
Yes.
I think that's the key issue in the conflict.
So what do you respond when you hear things like this?
Well, some points are like complete bullshit because, like myself, for example, I'm also Russian speaking, so it does not prevent me from fighting for Ukraine, for example. And I don't think that we should join Russia. And when he says about referendums that people vote to be a part of Russia, that's also a complete bullshit because, like, first of all, they occupy like towns and regions and villages, and after that, like, there are people with AKs walking around, like knocking to your door and saying, "Hey, man, I'm pretty sure you want to be a part of Russia." And I guess, like, you don't have pretty much of a choice in what to say because people who protested, they disappeared. And so I don't think that in any way it can be called like a valid referendum.
Right.
That's incredible.
Some clips as well. I just thought.
So that's point one. We'll get to him responding to a Trump clip, but just brilliantly said. And one little fun side note is that guy, and we won't say any names, obviously, but is a viewer of the show. What? I walked into this, again, keeping it vague, room that we were in, and he was like, "Hey, I've seen your show." And I was like, what? That's incredible. But so powerful on both of those points. The first, and you'll hear this a lot, is what's the big deal in these eastern regions of Ukraine? There's a lot of Russian speakers. So the argument they make when they bring up that point, it's not just to throw that, that's a fun fact. It's to say, who's to say it's not rational for Russia to murderously invade and take over? Or why shouldn't we just hand that to them? For two reasons. Number one, a shared language does not eliminate a country's sovereignty. If you argue that, then you're arguing the UK has every right to take over the US because we speak English and they speak English. That would be insane. And number two, a lot of the presence of the Russian language that they're talking about is a result of previous Russian imperialism and the forcing of their language and their culture and their politics onto Ukrainians. And then he's saying he's a Russian speaker. He is. And that doesn't mean he wants to be a part of Russia. Stunning, just crushing that. And then the referendum point, Russia will facilitate these elections essentially at gunpoint, these votes on do you want to be a part of Russia that are totally fraudulent and, as he said, are at gunpoint, are at threat of violence. And then they go, see, everyone that we're forcing to say they want to be with us wants to be with us. And people fall for it somehow. Here's more.
Let's start with this one because I remember this one was
that
annoyed
is
me the most.
so upsetting.
You never know. It's war.
Can you stop the family?
With war, you never know, right? War's very tricky, very horrible, But with war, you never know. Things change. People go into war, think they're going to win the war, and then they get their asses kicked, and they lose their country, and they lose millions of lives. Nobody goes into a war thinking they're going to lose. They go in. I'm sure that Ukraine thought they were going to win. It's going to be, we're going to win. You're going to beat somebody that's 15 times your size. Biden shouldn't have let that happen. Biden shouldn't have. I mean, the man was grossly incompetent. He should have never been there. That would have never happened. But you don't go into a war that's 15 times your size.
Well, it's really quite hard to comment on that because it's like a complete reversal of what's actually going on. And Ukraine didn't start this war. It didn't start it in like 2022. It didn't start it in 2014. Like our country was invaded. We were like invaded back then. After that, there were like some treaties that like hold mostly. Like active fighting began in 2022. But like, for example, my personal opinion that like, for example, this war was decided like long before that, and well, I was like a former tanker, for example, so tanks are interesting for me. So, for example, back in 2022, the main battle tank that was used by Russia was T-72B3 variant that was modified in 2016. So, yeah, back there, like in 2016, they started like a major program to refurbish their tank and refit them, rebuild them. So back then, they were already preparing like a huge army to fight the war. So it's not like it was decided like
2022.
Yeah, 2022 in February.
We had a different. And this point kept coming up, which is Trump says that, and we all know it to be absurd, especially because now he hasn't been able to end the war. Makes it even more absurd that he claimed not just that it never would have happened if he were president, but also that he would have stopped it in 24 hours. But a lot of soldiers would go, whoa, this didn't start in 2022. I mean, that was a full-scale invasion. But Russia's been building to this. Some of them cite 2014, and some of them cite before. For long before that, in clear ways. And has been attempting to achieve the horrific ambitions that they're now seeking to do for long before the full-scale invasion. And some of them kind of like cut me off to say that. They really wanted me to have that takeaway. Here's more.
Soldier say something to that effect. Like, a lot of people act like the war started in 2022, but while that's the full-scale invasion, this conflict's been going on, since 2014, really.
Yeah, that's true. So it's not that Ukraine started this war, and it's not for like Ukraine to end it unless we would like to surrender.
Right.
And that's not an option for us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why do you think so many people in the United States, politicians, commentators, repeat what the Kremlin says, repeat stuff
So that's Kalen Robertson's voice, who facilitated this whole trip. Thank you so much, Kalen.
like this so often?
Well, Kremlin has quite a good propaganda, and they invest like a lot of money and resources in it. So, like to spread out this controversial facts, they're like fake news, they're like imaginary histories that they have, like around referendums, will of the people, and so on. But it doesn't make it true, but a lot of people still believe it. Like they don't know how to find the actual truth, or they don't see it the way we do, for example, because you cannot see it like on the internet, what's going on here.
Wow.
What, I asked this to every single soldier volunteer I've met in Ukraine. What are you fighting for?
Well, we're fighting for our country. What can be like the other answer?
Simply answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, this, I told you before, we got laughed at with that question multiple times. What are we fighting for? Now, the reason we're asking it is not because we don't know, but it's impactful to hear from them. And a lot of people, and the Russian propaganda that was previously mentioned, tries to distort that. And the soldiers, they don't even know what they're fighting for, and they don't even want to be doing this, and they just want to hand everything to Russia, and some of them speak Russian, so who's to say? Like you heard Witkoff say. Let me Was there any other clip, or was that? I'll probably end up playing more of this, but you saw him responding to Trump there. And then one other part I want to show you for now is here.
Ukraine.
I know the answer to this question, and I don't like asking it, but it comes up a lot. A lot of people, you kind of saw it in that Witkoff clip, go, why not just concede land, and then we'll have peace, right? From your words, either of you, why should people stop pushing that argument?
Well, it's a complicated question, but like as our president already told Mr. Trump, we don't have any guarantees that this will not happen again in half a year or a year. So back in 2014, we made the truce agreement, and we tried to stick to it as much as we could, and we already give actual control over Crimea, over most part of some part of Donetsk and Lugansk region, but then it started again in 2022, and there is no guarantees that, for example, just an imagination that if we will freeze the actual front line, that Russia will not rebuild their army. They also really exhausted. We have a shortage of manpower, a lack of equipment, of shells, and so on. But the same goes for them. And after a couple of years, they will rebuild their tanks, produce more shells, and why not take some other part? Especially because what they done, it's really legally crazy, because for example they claim that Zaporizhia region is part of Russia, and they included it in their constitution, but they never even occupied this region, and they just claim ownership on it. And well, there is no guarantee that it will not happen again. For example.
Yeah, I mean, it is stunning. That's what we've been saying, and to hear it directly from them is so impactful. It's pretty simple why the Witkoff argument, the Tucker Carlson argument, the Trump argument is so dangerous. And number one, as you heard in the Witkoff clip, they perpetuate Russian lies. And then number two, the product of, all right, let's just as I said, freeze the lines where they are now, give Russia anything they currently occupy, and then say, stop this time. This has been a multi-decade project, and all they would use that for would be the biggest gift in the world to say, all right, we're going to legitimately acknowledge some of these eastern regions as Russian, because then a very exhausted Russian military could rebuild just to go further. Not to mention, there are families, there are communities, people's homes that Russia has no right to, and that would be ruined by that agreement. We talked to a soldier who, as I've now referenced a few times, is very tangibly fighting to push back the Russian military so that where his family is in occupied Russian territory, he can see again, because they're stuck in Russian occupied territory. And so it's fine to go, wait, is there any, it's not going to be perfect, but concession argument that we could, or deal that we could facilitate that would stop the war? And the answer with this multi-decade project of Putin that all of them explain over and over when you ask, the soldiers do, Ukrainian soldiers, and anyone who's keeping up with this, any deal like what Trump talks about with these land concessions would only be used for further aggression if there weren't, and that's the important part he brought up, security guarantees, protections by Europe and the United States to prevent further Russian aggression. So I wanted to share that with you, and I really appreciate him going on video and answering those questions. And it's painful to be like, here's the U.S.'s president taunting you, saying, why'd you pick a fight with a bigger country? I didn't even jump in to comment on that because you already know my take. It's just totally demented to argue that. What does that even mean? Ukraine didn't pick a fight with anybody. Russia invaded. It's really obvious. And he perpetuates that so casually. And when he's with Zelensky can't really correct him because Trump will blow up. And so he just gets to spout it off. And it led to, some of those arguments led to that soldier saying it's BS. It's just totally BS. And I in that environment, cannot express more my gratitude for all of them sharing their stories or their reactions like he did, and that he watches the show. Amazing. And they're heroes fighting for the country. They laugh when people say, "What are you fighting for? Are you fighting for the military industrial complex or something?" I'm fighting for my family, my country, and we know what it looks like when Russia occupies. It's horrible, and we don't want that to happen to our families. Share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you appreciate the show.